Move about the country.
Hello, hello. Welcome back to another episode of YOML. YOML,
Yeah,
it
yeah.
stands for Year of Magical Learning. And today we're up to book 53. The book is Nudge. Why don't you tell us about Nudge, Chris?
Yeah, why don't you tell us about Nudge? I know you've read this one, so you tell us about the book.
Okay, well, a Nudge is about it's a book written by Richard Thaler and Cass Sunstein. It's about improving decisions by nudging people like when so in a book they talking about there's certain things that you can do to set people in the right direction by giving them a little hint or giving them a default choice. For example, in insurance, when you say if you from year to year, if you go and you don't pick anything, by default it'll pick for you, like, hey, you pick on this default uh, plan or whatever it is. So basically, it's nudging you to be covered in that sense. And when so it's talking about how people can use certain um I guess matrix to give you decision like, hey, how do I make you invest in 401k, for example, is to
Right.
kind of like by default, if you don't opt out, you are opt in for this percentage or whatever. Similar to a lot of social media where they talk about, by default, you are allowing people to see your email, see your profile,
Yeah.
bio,
Share your
whatever, until
data.
you
Yeah.
opt
Yeah.
out. You have to opt out of the privacy. So these are kind of um like nudging in a way, because you create a decision tree to give people something that, hey, if they don't have the inclinations or forget about it, they are into that category. And so to me, that's what I get from the book. That's I mean, I'm in my own word what that book is about. And it's about having informations to um architect choices for people. So they call these people choice architecture.
Right.
And a lot of businesses, they use this information to, like, like I just mentioned, Facebook, for example, would actually give you a choice to opt out, but by default you allow them to collect your information until you opt out of it, or privacy
Right.
and this and that. So they are using these kind of nudge concept for their own benefit. And so in a nutshell, that's what the book is about from my perspective. What about you, Chris?
Yeah. No, I think you nailed it. I mean, the only thing I would add to that would be it's about deep understanding of humanity, and why, the why we do what we do, just by
Yes, yes, I agree.
and then from there leveraging that to
Yeah, you
create that choice
leveraging people's
architecture. Right.
psychologies and default
Right.
behavior. And so, like I said, people tend to forget. And so you kind of, if they tend to forget, so you're going to say, well, how can I create a choice for them to
Right.
leverage that weakness or strength, whatever you want to call it, right?
Right.
And make that as a benefit to me or a benefit to them, depending on how I want intent to choose to place it, right? Whether that,
Exactly.
hey, you want to invest in some kind of 401k, and these are the indexes or whatever, that if you don't choose, it's going to be default. This is the index, and this is the best index or the most safe index, or whatever the case may be. So with the choice architects, they are able to use it for good or for bad based on their intent, but at the
Right.
same time, it's leveraging, or in a way you could say exploiting
Yeah.
the human psychology of common, people has the same common weakness or
Blind
behavior, whatever
spots
you want
or
to determine that.
biases, heuristics.
Yeah,
Yeah. I mean, it
exactly.
literally, it builds on, if you took thinking fast and slow, and then you took all the cognitive biases and heuristics and things like that people just naturally experience in this world, and then decided to craft like your own little maze out of it. I think that's like nudge, in my
Right, right.
thoughts. But so that leads, it's good description of the book. Before I get to the reflection, would you recommend this book or not? Like, I mean, I'm curious, like.
I think I would. It's a pretty good book because it's a double-edged sword, because you have to look it from a perspective of this is your power, right? Because if I give somebody a sword, right, I could hurt myself or I could defend myself.
Right.
I give somebody a gun, the same thing, right? It's about a tool that you use. If you don't use it, right, other people are going to use on you. So do you pretend that you don't know and let people, you know, kind of nudge you in the direction that you may not want? Is that, I mean, to me,
You're killing my reflection, because this is what I was this is what I did. This is exactly the thought
okay,
that I had when I
okay.
read
So
this
so
idea.
I would recommend,
Great
without
minds think
any
alike. Yeah.
explanation, let you take on with the reflection.
All right. Yeah. Your great minds think alike, though. Yeah. So I don't know. I'm actually a little torn on whether or not I would recommend this book. I enjoyed it, but I learned from it, but I don't know that I don't know. I'm like 50-50 on this one as to whether or
Okay.
not I would,
Well,
you know,
let's ask the
recommend it.
same. Let's
Yeah.
ask this question to you
Yeah.
after we gone through our discussions, and see if
Yeah.
you you know, change your mind.
Fair enough. So actually, similar along the lines of what you were talking about, the reflection title is with knowledge comes power. So choose wisely how you apply that in the world, right? So I mean, honestly, we've already talked a lot about this reflection already, which I probably should have just let the conversation go. But the you know, the my thought was, after reading this book and reading all the books that we've been reading, the more that I learn on this journey about, you know, how our brain works, how our bodies work, how our minds work, how, you know, how my mind works,
Mm-hmm.
how the things that I, you know, the blind spots that I have, that what you see is all there is kind of, you know, aspects of this life, the influence from Robert Cialdini kind of stuff, the, you know, just the psychology of, you know, the thousands and thousands and thousands of years of what's gone into making us who we are today. You know, the more I'm become more fascinated, but the, you know, it's sometimes I want to go back in time and say, like, sometimes really ignorance is bliss, you know. Like I don't know that I you know, when you don't know some things, sometimes, like, you know, it could be better sometimes, you know, like when you haven't learned that first little nugget of knowledge or whatever, and you're not willing to go a lot deeper, like people can become pretty dangerous with stuff like this, you know. Like we talked about, like the Black Swan book, you know, like if that's the only book you read once, you read one book a year and that's the one you pick up, like I don't, that's not a good idea. That's when you become crazy, like, you know. Like
Yeah,
that's when you,
because your world
like,
is turned upside down
exactly.
without any
So
point of reference to correct it.
exactly. So my, my honest to God advice would be, is either you either go all in on your knowledge quest and making learning a part of your life, or and you remember and anchor yourself on the fact that you don't know shit, you know, you don't know anything. Just always remind yourself, like, the more that you do feel like, you know, like, you really don't know anything, right?
Okay.
There's
Okay.
so that's like the anchor that kind of holds me to everything. But at the end of the day, you know, if I had my choice between just a little bit of knowledge and no knowledge, I probably would pick no knowledge, to be honest with you, because it's because it could be look, I don't care, manipulate me, like, you know, I don't really care, like, I mean, as long as I'm happy and that, you know, that's fine. But that said, though, nudge is one of those, like, really interesting concepts, if you will, of how to build on that knowledge and how to apply that into the world. And you know, nudging for me in particular, one of the reasons why I don't know that I love this book, it is, you know, who am I to choice architect somebody else's life, you know? Like I struggle with this one, I don't, if we self-proclaim that we don't know shit, like we always do, because I think we both believe that at our core, like, I mean, even if I think that I know what I'm doing, and I put you in a maze of my, you know, design, and yes, while I don't make the decision for you, I certainly have a bias and a, you know, a lean toward what I feel like is good, right, you know, versus bad, and then who's defining good versus bad, you know. So I struggle a lot with this concept, especially for, you know, the whole idea of libertarian paternalism that he talks about in the book, right? You know, I think of, like, my own dad, right?
Yes.
And I wrote about this in the reflection. I love my dad. Like, he's amazing. He's a great guy. Like, you know, I think he's, you know, I mean, there's a lot of amazing things about him, but I also know that he does not know best. Like, you know, like if my dad was choice architecting my life as a kid, I would be like, oh my God, I'm like, I'm screwed, not that he's a bad person, but like, my dad doesn't know anything and we don't know anything, so like, to think that father knows best, like, which is literally, libertarian paternalism, right? Like,
Right,
I
right.
mean, I don't know. I'm not going to choice architect my children's life, like I'm not gonna nudge them. I don't want to nudge them. Like I want to help them to discover what's important for them and to grow and to learn and to develop their own understanding of their life around them and to use that however they want to apply that. That's up to them, I guess. But for me, I think nudging is something that I don't know how I totally feel about. Yeah, this is why I don't know that I would highly recommend this book. So at the end of the day, though, like learning is a blast. It's a ton of fun, and I never want to stop it. I never want it to be not a part of my life. But with that knowledge comes a lot of power, like in how you apply this in the world. So I just wanted to make a note on this one of like keep learning. Everybody should learn, but at the end of the day, like really, really, really think hard about how you apply that knowledge into this world. And if nudging is what you want to do, then I guess go ahead and do that. But yeah, I mean, you could really turn this into some wicked stuff, if you really wanted to. And that's when it becomes a little dicey for me. So that's my reflection. And the question would be is how are you applying your knowledge in your world? But yeah, I'd love to get your thoughts. Like, do you agree with this concept or not? Like,
Okay, so I have a couple of points. They are not all related. So I'll probably just go through. I mean, there's no in any particular order, but it's I find it interesting that you said that ignorance is bliss, and that it's you either go all in the knowledge or you stay out of it, right?
Yeah.
And I totally agree with that, because for me, the way I see it is that it's knowledge and ignorance is like the two part of a dumbbell.
Right. Yeah. It's the polarity, right? Yeah. You
right. And so you can't have just a little knowledge.
Right.
You either have all the knowledge, like
which is impossible.
The majority of them anyway, right? On the ignorance side, because to me, when you learn of something, you feel sad, you feel depressed, because knowledge is that, right?
Yeah.
But the thing is, what I've learned throughout my learning journey is that you cannot go to wisdom unless you cross knowledge.
I agree with that. Like I'm not. Right? I think we both agree that knowledge and the quest of knowledge and learning is
right, because if you stay in knowledge,
right.
You stay in knowledge. It's a painful experience. It's mentally painful. Yeah. Because you know all kind of shit that you shouldn't be knowing.
Yep.
Right. I mean, think about reading The Black Swan, thinking about reading Nudge, right? And so that in that essence, it's just like, what the hell is going on?
Right.
You basically in that knowledge hell.
Right.
Like, until you're able to find some kind of insights or patterns into the knowledge and apply it. So like, you have to have knowledge to get to wisdom. Wisdom is when you able to like learn something from the knowledge itself, right? And so that is the child. Wisdom is a child of knowledge. But until you get to wisdom is where you want to find the happiness, right? Where you know a lot and things make sense.
Yep.
When you in knowledge, it doesn't. And so that's the thing is, ignorance is bliss, but at the same time, you will never be the opposite of you cannot get to wisdom, because you have to cross it.
Is ignorance maybe bliss, but like learning is fulfillment. And like I don't necessarily like happiness isn't the end all be all. Like right, like it's sometimes
it's not about happiness. It's about fulfillment. Fulfillment is what you're looking for. Happiness is a side effect of fulfillment.
Exactly. That's I guess I was saying if ignorance in its purest form is just pure happiness, where you're so stupid that you don't even know like whether or not you should be sad or not, you know what I mean, or unhappy or in pain or not. But
ignorance tends to put you in a position where you're not able to have a lot of flexibility and options.
Yeah, you're
and
vulnerable. Yeah,
yeah,
yeah.
you're vulnerable for people to take advantage of you, for people to make your life harder, even though you're ignorant about that particular subject or whatever that is you're in. You don't know, hey, the world is evil, right? You don't know that, and that's
Right.
fine. But because you don't know, that doesn't mean that you're not going to struggle to do business or raise family or kids picking on your kids,
Right. Right.
right? And so you still have to deal with the heartaches of the other things because of ignorance.
Right.
Yes, you are safe from knowing that the world is corrupt or whatever the case, or the world is harsh or whatever, right? The wilderness is harsh or the weather is harsh. You can't live in a world like that. But at
Yep.
the same time, because you are ignorant, you're not prepared. And
Right. I mean,
therefore, when you start a business, people can take advantage of you. You can't even rise just for a little bit to breathe. You're treading water all the time. So it comes with its own downfall.
100%. I don't. I mean, there is no such thing as pure ignorance. Like, I mean, life is learning. Like, no matter, even if you actively tried to never learn ever in your life, you're gonna learn something. You know,
Yes,
like you're gonna learn.
yes. You
Like,
can learn something that because you learn something, hey, some idiot, boys, trying to impress somebody, pick up, kind of picked on your daughter and make fun of her and shame her for whatever, just to look good among his friends. You
right.
learn that,
Right.
and
Exactly.
that knowledge it depresses you,
Right. Right. Like
right?
you cannot go through life not learn. It's impossible
So
to go
so
through life not
knowledge
learning.
is something that you're gonna learn. So
Right.
when we learn, we choose the knowledge we want to
Yeah, you can
learn.
control it. That I think that
Because
was where I was going to go with this. Is like, you can't avoid learning in this world, but
yes,
you can choose
because
what you learn.
it's either you're gonna learn something or things gonna come by you and knock on your door and say, hey, this is what happened to you
Right.
today.
Right.
You're gonna learn
Yeah.
it one way or another.
And that's when, some of the, we've talked about on this journey, some of the biggest lessons in life come from the most painful things, right? Because you learn that, because that's when it forces you to reflect and learn and to dig deep, because you have to, right? But like, I mean, one of the things that you and I have talked about ad nauseum, over this whole journey is like, we don't want people to have to go through what we went through in order to make learning a part of their life, in order to understand who they are, what they're, how they want to live their life and what's important to them. Like, we don't want people to have to experience the lows of to make learning, to put their values center stage and to go figure out these things in their life, what's important to them. Let's help them to do it now and to get them an ecosystem and an environment to find that path forward. So like that's how we're applying our knowledge. I'm okay. So like my general rule of thumb, and I think you would probably agree with this, would be, I'd say apply your knowledge toward your purpose and toward your infinite game, toward the things that you care about. Like, and I don't mind if you're choice architecting that stuff, because you care. Like, I know that you care,
Right,
and I know that if that's important to you, you're even if you unknowingly lead people down the wrong path, you did it with good intentions, and you did it because you really truly cared, and this was what you were dedicated to. So
yes.
I'm totally cool with people nudging in that regard. But if you're just nudging people just to fuck around, just to mess around, with people, like, and to play games, like, I'm not cool with that. Like, and that's the stuff that gets, where I am on the edge of this book. You know what I mean? Yeah. Yes.
Yeah. So that brings me to my next point is that I think we need to know how to nudge for our own purposes, because we can decide what to do with the knowledge, right? You can use it for bad or you use it for good, right? Because if you say, yeah, if I can choice architect my life in a way that's gonna make my life better, so can I help me, give me a leg up in my life, because I have this heuristic, is kind of like million of years of conditioning to do this, right? And if that's the case, we need to know both our strengths and weaknesses so that we can prepare for it. And I think that's why I think I would recommend this book, because you're gonna need to know whether you can choice architect your own choices in your life,
Yeah, that's a
and
good point.
also be able to defend against people going to architect for their own benefit, that it goes, that is not for your benefit, that's bad for you, it's harmful for you.
Right.
Because if you don't know that, you going to go along because that makes sense, or whatever the case may be, right? So
Right.
you gotta be able to protect yourself. So that's why I do believe this book is warranted, and recommendations. And I may add one other thing to it. So the when I read the book, the reason why I recommend this book and I like this book, because when they talk about libertarian paternalism, I don't take that, I don't emphasize on that. And I think because I ignore that concept, because if we talk about that concept alone, then I would hate it.
Right.
But I think because you have more emphasis on that particular concept, where he is saying, hey, we know best, so we're going to tell you what to do. So that to me is a separate. If you can take that away and ignore that part in the book, I think the book is great.
Yeah, that's totally fair. I think you actually sold me on saying that I would recommend this book, and only because, like, I think you hit on a really important part of what we're trying to do here, and what we're trying to build here, for our own selves, is we nudge our own life, and we create our own choice architecture around our values. And it's important to, like, there's this is a standing meeting for us every single night. Like, we have it's on the calendar, right? Like, I mean, we have the ability to say no, but we've already told
Yes,
ourselves that we're
it's
going
a
to do it,
default.
right?
It's a
Right.
default in learning. It's not default in,
Exactly. Yeah.
hey, I want to opt into learning. No, right?
Exactly.
Right.
Right.
You have to opt out. You cannot, right? That's a good use of choice architecture, and
Exactly.
knowing how to use it. I mean, every day we are learning about different books and different concept, and knowing your heuristic and my heuristic, our own default psychology, our own weaknesses, because of our conditioning for millions of years. We understand a lot of things we haven't even on our mind. Like, we never cross our minds
Right.
if we haven't done all these things. But because we choose to default every day, to meet every day at the same time and talk about something new,
Right.
something that we say, well, this is something that this is what I believe in. It actually reaffirm what we believe in, reaffirm
Yeah.
what we learn, and also expand, because you and I are able to add to each other's arsenal,
Agreed. Yeah.
right?
It's here's my summation of this. And man, this is why these conversations are fun. It's nudge by example. Nudge your own life first, and create the choice architecture, and that makes you lead by example. And then you end up creating meaningful work projects like we're doing right now, which then
Right.
we're kind of nudging other people. I mean, we're broadcasting these things, we're putting it on
Yes.
YouTube, we're
Yes.
putting it on Clubhouse, we're putting it on, the blog, I'm sharing it on social media, stuff like that. We're in a roundabout sort of way, we're nudging people, and that is our plan. Is to get
Yes.
people curious, who wanted to go through this whole entire process with us, to do their own Year Magical Learning journey, to join the clubity mission of living their values and expressing their values, individualistically, but also as a collective, where we can all can gain together. So I say it's nudge yourself and lead by example first, and in turn, I think you will naturally start to nudge other people toward
Right.
toward what you're trying to do, and that aligns to that's alignment, with purpose, with yourself, with your meaning, with meaningful work, with meaningful relationships building around that. Like, that I'm into, like, at a macro level, at like the government level of libertarian paternalism, nudging an entire population just because you think that's the right thing to do. Like, I don't know if I'm cool with that. Like,
Right. The thing is, I think I'm looking from the perspective of not using nudge as a government agency, or as the big tech companies, or as any of those guys. I'm looking from my perspective as a user, because, like, for one, the first thing you said was to kind of nudge your own, to make yourself better. But at the same time, the second thing you can do is you can identify what other people have been used to nudge you into, and then you can identify that and decide whether or not that's good for you. And so you can opt out of it and defend yourself, because if you don't defend yourself, well, that's a big problem.
I agree.
Because
I'm being
because
nudged. I
if
get
this
nudged all day long in
company,
Salesforce.
yeah,
Yeah.
because they act on the father knows best concept, and they tell you, hey, we should know all of your activities and whether privacy or not, and so we need to track all your activities so we can tell you what you need, tell you what you don't need, tell you how to vote, tell you how to what to say, what not to say, what's
Yeah.
PC, what not PC, right? And to me, they are gonna do that to you anyway.
Yeah. If you're not choice
You're gonna
architecting your
have
own life, somebody else is going
to
to be.
to realize it
Yeah.
and defend yourself. Well, you don't know, and you can defend yourself. And so for
That's a great
me,
point.
it's to me, with our discussion, I think I really recommend this book. But I would really, really, really recommend if you have the ability, read Think Fast and Slow first, and then read this book.
Yeah, that's true. That's true. They do touch on it a little bit at the beginning of it, but I think that the
Well,
basis
but the thing
of
is,
understanding it
it's
is better.
talking about heuristic. It's talking about how you become that way, and what your brains are doing, and Thinking Fast and Slow. I think that book is good by itself without having to turn your your life upside down, and then having that point of reference will give Nudge a little bit a more understandable spin.
Yeah.
And
Yeah, that's
then
fair.
try not to pretend that you're going to be the guy who's gonna enact the concept of libertarian paternalism.
Right. Like
Right.
I said, with a little bit of knowledge comes like, there's nothing I say and cooler and also the worst thing in the world, about learning something new.
Yes.
You become this evangelist of I mean, we saw this with the some of our explorers, when they were discovering their own value and getting kind of preachy about it. Like you haven't fully resonated in your own mind yet of what this actually means, and you get this little bit of knowledge, you want to go tell everybody, right?
Right.
So I think my final point is once you get a little taste of this stuff, that's great, but keep going, just dive all the way into the learning journey, and join what we're doing, like hell, we'll be here to support you to do that. We're trying to put together a program where people can do their own your magical learning, and then eventually, as this stuff all starts to absorb and you'll start to understand, it'll become clear what you want to do with this knowledge, and how you want to apply it to your life, and how you want to live your values off of it. That would be my recommendation. Don't just do a little bit, just go in, make it a part of your life. Yeah.
Right. So
Awesome.
in the end, what would you say you're gonna recommend? Is it that's a recommend, and that's a no?
I'll recommend it. You convinced me to.
Okay.
If I pivot this to apply to my own personal life and my own choice architecture of myself, because that's the only thing I can control. I'm in. I'm into that. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
So for me, I think one of the things I would recommend to Professor Thaler and the author Cass Sunstein is if you can maybe remove or tone down the libertarian paternalism a little bit more, I would like the book a little bit more. Because I think that for whatever reason they insert that into the book and make that book a little bit more icky, because like you couldn't get past it.
Yeah. I couldn't. I was thinking of it the entire time as like a manipulative thing at a macro level, and I don't know that that's their intention. I think it's just understanding yourself and understanding how to create choice architecture to lead you to the choices you feel is right, and if you're following your values, that will always lead you in the right direction. So choice architecture life around that. And I think that hell, you could rewrite this entire book around choice architecture of values, guiding your way, if that's the path, that is what we're preaching. It's the same thing, so anyway, awesome guys. Any other final thoughts before we wrap up?
No, I think we got them all. So
awesome. Yeah, that was a good conversation. So the question for anybody listening in, or something you want to reflect on yourself, is how are you applying your knowledge in this world? Something to really think deeply about, and figure out what really matters to you, and how you are sharing that with the world. So thanks for joining us, and we will see you next episode.
Yeah, sounds good. We'll see you.